Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Warner, and I'm with EntreDot, and here we are, Monday Night Live at 7 p.m. with EntreDot. What I want to talk about is this whole issue of returning to work, and I want to speak to you mainly from the perspective of the business owner. It could be an office kind of situation. People come back to an office complex. It could be a brick and mortar, restaurant, anything in the hospitality industry, breweries, retail, anything like that, where the owner of the business has to figure out how they're going to get people back to work. And I'll be speaking indirectly from the point of view of the employees of those companies, and even more indirectly, the customers of those companies, but mainly the business owner. So let's get on into it, see what we got to talk about here. First, let's talk about the principles of all this. The principles of all of what's going on in COVID-19 land is safety first. Safety, safety, safety. Anytime you get into a debate about what to do in this pandemic, the first thing out of your brain should be, I need to be safe. The people around me need to be safe. Now, I want to add a little bit of a twist to this. Now, from the point of view of the owner of a business, safety first. But in the conducting of your activities to create a come back to work strategy, I'm really strongly suggesting you put on your empathy hat. Couple everything you do and how you talk about this and your relationship with your employees and your customers is empathy. Have an empathetic way about you. People are scared to death. Some are more in trouble than others. Some people have diseases that don't go well with COVID-19. Some people are in age groups, me included, that are kind of in that danger zone. So don't talk down to people. Let me put it positively. Be empathetic. Be compassionate. Be caring about them. Listen to them and talk to them as if you cared. End of that speech. I've said this stuff before, but I needed to say it again. So we're talking about safety first as a principle structured in a supportive set of technologies. I'm talking about software platforms, phone applications, any other kind of supportive technology to communicate and engage with employees and customers and partners, things like that. Things that are going way beyond and are very specific to the pandemic issues. All founded in thoughtful planning, and I'm going to go through some of the thoughtful planning steps in a few minutes here. All driven by responsible people. Responsible people. So in addition to being safety and empathetic, be responsible. Carry out responsible acts. Don't be foolish. There are a lot of guidelines to follow. You're going to pick the ones that are best for your business, but be responsible. Don't do stupid things like go into big crowds in downtown Raleigh and beat up people and yell in people's faces. Be safe and be responsible in helping others to be safe. Okay, those are the principles. Let's move on from there. So we're going to talk about pulling together return to work strategy. And you start with people first. Figure out the issues you have with people and their concerns, and then figure out, well, what do I have to do to my workplace to accommodate their needs? Make sense? So there's no blueprint for any of this. You've got to make it up. I'm just trying to guide you in the process. There's no blueprint. We do have guidelines. We have executive orders in the presidential level, the governors, the mayors of cities, even counties sometimes. So there are guidelines to follow. There's plenty of great information about how to handle COVID-19. You know, the biggies are social distancing and masking and washing your hands or sanitizing your hands. And those things will play for a long time. But the assessment that's needed initially here to get this process going is a workforce willingness assessment. What does that mean? Fancy words. Workforce willingness assessment. That means you're going to talk to your employees. every single one of them, one-on-one. This is where empathy plays now. And be empathetic as you do it. You do not dictate anything. You're trying to find out what their situation is personally. You're gonna explain your intent. We intend to go back to work. We intend to invite you back into our office or our restaurant or whatever it is that you have. But you want to know what they need for them to feel comfortable in coming back to work, and let them tell you. And write it down. Keep track of what every person said. To keep a kind of a record, like an Excel spreadsheet with lots of columns on things that they said. You want to know. This is part of you being sensitive to their needs, and you're listening and being empathetic. You want to know, what does it take to get them back to work? And what does get back to work mean? It could be being online. It could be they just simply work from home via telephone. It could be, they'll come in 2-3 days a week and work from home the rest of the time. You want to test all of these possibilities and what it is that they're really wanting to do. And it will be very much dependent on the kind of job they had when they left and what kind of job they're going to have when they come back. You may want to allow them to work at home for some amount of time. You may want really them to come in because they got a hands-on job to do on a manufacturing line, or meet customers in a store, or wait on people in a restaurant. It depends on the situation, what it is you're going to have to get people to do. But right now, in this willingness assessment, you're going to find out what they're willing to do. Keep in mind, they are very worried about going back to work. They're worried about just going out of the house. The second is then your workplace readiness assessment. Okay, you got a place. It's a restaurant or a retail outlet or an office building. For the sake of discussion, suppose they all came back. How would you handle it? How ready are you to accommodate people coming back into your building? You have them spaced far enough apart. Are the access ways going to be safe? All the way out to the parking lot and getting into the building. Is that safe? How are you going to keep people separate? What kind of equipment are we going to need to separate tables? What do we have to do to make a conference room safe? And on and on and on. So those are two assessments that kind of get you started with what people's concerns are and what your workplace, what are you going to have to do to be ready for people to come back to work? Let's move on. Now, this step, we're going to create a strategy. We know about people. We know exactly how they feel about things. And we got a feel for what it's going to take to get my office space into the shape it needs to be in to accommodate people. So I suggest you do the following 5 things. There are probably 25 things, but here's 5 that seem reasonable to me and pretty important. There is a lot written on how to do this already. It's all over the internet. Go to just Google on back to work strategy, and you will get literally hundreds of articles. And read the ones that come from reputable outlets and reputable people. But read a few of them, and you'll learn how other companies, because they give examples of how others are doing this, how other companies are handling this. You'll get ideas. It'll get your kind of creative juices going on how to handle people and how to handle your workplace. So figure out what the best practices are. You might even Google on that. Best practices for returning to work, COVID-19, something like that. Then you summarize and put together a composite of all the priorities of the people and what you learned from that assessment we just got through talking about. People are first in this. Figure that out. You'll be able to summarize probably in 6, 7, 8 sentences the major things I'm going to have to do to accommodate all of these preferences, if you will, for people and how they want to return to work, from working home, working online, and actually being present in a building somewhere. Then given the kind of company you are, you've got to decide how work is going to be done. You shouldn't assume that the way work was done back in January is the way you're going to do work come July and August here. Not at all. You're going to factor into your thinking, well, wait a minute, half of my people are going to be staying at home. They will not be coming in. They don't want to come in till the third quarter or whatever they say. So now you got to figure out a way to get work done with some people at home and some people at work. Some can go online and work from home and doing that. You've got to reshape the way work is handled based upon these people's priorities, quite frankly. Because this is so scary. If you don't accommodate the people, there is a good chance they're going to take a hike and go somewhere else that will accommodate their needs. They're not going to jeopardize their family, themselves, their spouses, and their kids for a job. I don't think. What do you think? Does that make sense? So figure out how work is going to be done. What is the workflow? Now, if you're a restaurant, workflow is reasonably complicated. If you've been to a restaurant, you'll see the flow of a waiter and a waitresses, what goes on in the kitchen. You can even ask them, how many different people touched my plate before you brought it here? See if they can explain that to you. Were your hands sanitized before you picked up this plate? And, see how they go about this stuff. If you're a software company, a lot of that work can be done from home. Software engineers and website developers can work from home and be on Zoom for meetings with other employees and with their managers and with their customers. Easy. That's a kind of a business that can accommodate a lot of work from home. Maybe that's the way you want it. It could be that's the way we're going to do business from now on, and you need less office space as a result of that. Of course, commercial real estate companies don't like to contemplate that, people needing less space. If you're a consulting business or any services-oriented business, lawyers, accountants, business consultants, coaches, mentors like us can do most of what they do from home. I think travel is probably out of the question for still quite a while. I don't want to get on an airplane. I don't know a lot of people that want to get on an airplane in this confined tube that may or may not filter air very well. Who the heck wants to take that risk? So a lot of work is going to be done over Zoom, even with customers. I ain't going to Michigan to meet with customers just to talk about how software development's done, or how their business ought to be operated, and via my fresh new consulting advice I'm going to give them. So the fourth thing is really thinking through how risk is going to be mitigated. There are lots of risks. So risks are people touching each other, people being too close to each other, people sneezing and coughing too near people, brushing by people, touching things that others have touched. You may want to consider taking people's temperatures before they walk into your building. Customers, partners, employees. That's an extreme, but in the restaurant world, I think that's pretty much called for waiters and cook staff. If they don't pass the temperature test, take a couple of weeks off. Looks like you got a problem, or go get tested. Better yet, maybe they don't have a problem; they just got a fever. So there are lots of ways to minimize risks. We've been taught them. These guidelines are very clear. Use them reasonably. Be responsible in protecting other people. I don't believe you can go into a retail store, at least in Wake County anyway, without having a mask on. In a retail store. That's how cautious they are. Do what you think is right to protect employees and customers. Then, the fifth thing for your strategy is, what the heck do I have to do to renovate or upfit my building to accommodate a new configuration? I may need less furniture. Where the heck am I going to put it? I may need to put up plexiglass barriers between adjacent tables and adjacent desks, things like that. I may have to do some building of some new offices to close people off. So there are lots of things that you have to consider for a workplace upfit. There are supplies you need to provide for washing of hands, sanitizing hands, masks you're going to give out. Some businesses need the protective clothing. I believe in restaurants the cooks are wearing the PPP, the protective outfits. So those are the 5 major things you need to consider. These are, I call them protocols and leading to a strategy, but think these through and develop the strategy for how to come back to work based on what you've learned in the assessment and what you now are considering as the way work is going to be done and what the employees' priorities are and how you're going to accommodate them. So that's the strategy. Let's move on now to a detailed plan. Now, what would that look like? The success factors that I think of, there are 3 that come immediately to mind. Is you define what readiness means. To me, that's checkpoints, points in time where certain readiness criteria that you determined earlier are being met. So we're not going to, you could come up with some things that we're not going to open for business till July 30th because we need to meet certain readiness standards. And here they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are they? And you have a plan to achieve every single one of them by July 30th. That's an example. But whatever they are, define what readiness means. Readiness is to move in. Now, in your plan, you may have multiple checkpoints. So move in is one of them. Now, move in could have been defined as, for my 50-person company, 23 of them are going to be in the building. The rest are going to be working from home. Checkpoint 2 is when we bring 15 more of them back into the office because they really are needed there, but they're people who are very uncomfortable about coming in. Target August 30th for that checkpoint. See where I'm headed? Checkpoint, checkpoint, checkpoint. What has to be achieved at each one of them? So that's defining readiness. A step-by-step reopening timeline. Now, reopening is to the first step of reopening. From here till then, say July 30th, pretending here. What are all of the steps that we have to go through? In other words, the tasks we've got to perform one by one, date by date, on a timeline, and who's going to do them, and monitored by a big honcho that is driving this plan. Big honcho being some manager in the company. Making all of this happen, pulling together all of the efforts in order to get us to a point where we're open. That implies that there is a list of tasks that have to be done in order to open by July 30th anyway. What the heck are they, and when are they going to be done by whom? I'm repeating myself. But that's a plan. Checkpoints and timelines. Built-in flexibility. In other words, a contingency plan. What if certain things don't get done and there's a cascading effect through the timeline and delays of future checkpoints? How are you going to deal with them? Now, you can't have a plan for every possible contingency, but I isolate in on the major ones, the things that are the critical checkpoints that must be met. You monitor them as a top priority and have a contingency plan for each. I'm talking about a handful of them. The big hitters, the ones that'll kill you, the ones that'll say, well, we can't make July 30th, but this is going to get pushed out for another 30 days because this happened. Well, you don't want that to happen. You want to have a contingency plan. So contingencies for the big hitters. Okay, those are success factors. A phase plan for the readiness with all the employee details. A reopening and staging of the reopening is what's called for here. So there are various phases for all of this occurring. So this is kind of overlaying checkpoints, timelines, and contingencies. But you have a master plan, if you will, for the readiness and the reopening, all laid out in phases, each of which have specific objectives to be achieved. That's it. So I've pretty well covered what it takes to be ready to go back to work. There's a lot to it. So you business owners, if you haven't been working on it, you better get moving because other businesses are opening up. I'm sure you are. But make sure you're doing it completely. Do this also expecting that this is going to be quite a while that you're going to be operating in this go back to work plan that you have developed. But you think about it. The reason we're in this mess is a virus came along that we were surprised by and we don't have a cure. And it's killing people. It's killing a lot of people worldwide, killing a lot of Americans. I don't want to argue about it. Is 125,000 people, worth all of this heartache we're going to go through? That's not the point. Point is, it could be 1,125,000. We don't know because we do not have control of this virus and won't until we have a vaccine. When is that going to happen? The big Dr. Fauci says maybe towards the end of the year. I don't know if he's kind of bowing to Trump or not in that, or whether he believes it or not, but that's about right. It would be an amazing feat if we got a vaccine by the end of this year. Well, okay, suppose we did. Then we got to have a whole lot of people have this vaccine administered to. And it's got to be manufactured and distributed to clinics all over America. And we go and be the first people to take this shot. You think everybody's going to do that? I don't know. I think there's going to be a large number of people that kind of, let's wait and see how this goes. I feel I'm safe. I don't want to take a risk of getting the flu from the darn shot they're going to give me. So it may take another quarter or two for people to be comfortable enough to actually take the vaccine and see that, it took. I probably am safe. I'm as safe as I'm going to be from this virus as I am from any of the others that might get me someday that I already have vaccines for. So expect this is going to last many months into first and second quarter next year. There are going to be people concerned all the way through the rest of the year. You can pretty well count on it. But nevertheless, let's get back to work. In whatever form we can get back to work. We must get back to work or we're going to lose a whole lot of businesses. A whole lot of small businesses are just plain going to run out of money, and the well and the bottomless pit of available money from the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury eventually runs out, that we're way over committed and our economy would just crater. But anyway, enough of that bad news. I hope this is helpful. If you have questions you'd like to discuss, points you'd like to make a comment. I'll be posting this Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and I look forward to seeing your comments then. I've enjoyed talking to you. Have a great evening. I'm Bill Warner with EntreDot.